Okay, I will be giving a presentation on my project, which is titled A Systematic Review of Epidemiological Studies Assessing the Behavioral Outcomes of Exposure to Perfluoroalkyl Substances, which is also known as PFAS. My name is Dion Goodwin Jr. I'm a McNair Scholar, and I attend Fort Valley State University, and my mentor is Dr. Celia Dodd. She's an associate professor in the Department of Biology at Fort Valley State University. So, your first question may be, what are PFAS? Per or polyfluoroalkyl substances are a large complex group of synthetic chemicals that have been used in consumer products around the world since about the 1950s. They are ingredients in various everyday products. For example, PFAS are used to keep food from sticking to packaging or cookware, make clothes and carpets resistant to stains, and create firefighting foam that is most effective. PFAS molecules have a chain of linked carbon and fluorine atoms. Because the carbon-fluorine bond is one of the strongest, these chemicals do not degrade easily in the environment. Human exposure to PFAS is a widespread but variable by geography and occupation. PFAS are used in aerospace, automotive, construction, and the electronic industries. Over time, PFAS may leak into the soil, water, and the air. People are most likely exposed to these chemicals by consuming PFAS contaminated water or food, using products made with PFAS, or breathing air containing PFAS. Because PFAS breaks down slowly, if at all, people and animals are repeatedly exposed to them, and blood levels of some PFAS can build up over time. One report by the CDC in prevention used data from the National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey found PFAS in the blood of 97% of Americans. However, new PFAS chemicals have been created and exposure to them is difficult to assess. So, my abstract is PFAS are a class of compounds that are utilized in manufacturing of products and coatings that demonstrate resistance to heat, oil, grease, and stains. PFAS chemicals have been found to be persistent in both the environment and animal tissue. Exposure to these chemicals can have significant health effects, including increased risk of kidney, testicular cancer, immunotoxicity, and thyroid disease. Multiple epidemiological studies have assessed the possible association between exposure to PFAS and the effects of the nervous system. The current study will perform a systematic review of epidemiological studies that suggest altered behavior outcomes, including deficits in attention and cognition following early in life exposure. Following guidelines outlined in the most recent PRISMA statement, PubMed will be used to identify articles published between 2018 and 2023 that focus on behavioral outcomes as indicators of nervous system disruption. Key search terms will include motor function, cognitive function, and attention. We aim to review 8 epidemiological articles, which could include cross-sectional, cohort, or case control studies that assess behavioral outcomes in connection with plasma blood level of PFAS. Results of this review will be presented. So, my methods that I used in the presentation, in the project, I utilized the PubMed database to conduct 3 distinct searches that adhered to established parameters. My first search was exposure to perfluoroalkyl substances and attention, and the filters that I used was in the last 5 years, humans, and English, and I was able to identify 11 articles that fell in the parameters of this search. Exposure to perfluoroalkyl substances and attention, 5 were identified. Exposure to PFAS substances and cognitive function, and I was able to identify 10. Exposure to PFAS and the behavior, and I was able to identify 12 articles. I selected articles for review based on the presence of specific type of measurement, namely the concentration of the PFAS in either maternal or prenatal blood or children's blood. The study utilized a parameter for selection based on the presence of a behavior or cognitive test in the article, which aimed to establish a correlation between PFAS and the nervous system's function, attention, or behavior. A study was conducted to investigate the absence of correlation between maternal and child PFAS concentration and repeated measures of ADHD symptoms at age 2.5 and 5 years in children. One article was selected to represent this perspective. In the first article, the results was a longitudinal cohort study suggested there is no significant association between prenatal exposure to PFAS and negative effects on neurobehavioral development in children at ages 2 and 4. Something that I found interesting in this article was it started with in the maternal plasma, the PFAS was measured then it was measured between ages 2 and 4, and then there was a child behavior checklist given to the children between ages 1.5 to 5 years old. There was also the Bayesian kernel machine regression, which is an analysis that could address the intercorrelation between multiple PFASs and able to help identify which PFAS the mother or the children were exposed to. In Article 2, the study found no evidence that prenatal PFAS exposure increases the risk of ADHD or childhood autism. In Article 3, PFOSA, which is a type of PFAS, exposure during intrauterine development decreased selective attention, while PFOA, which is another type of PFAS, exposure decreased executive function. The study suggests that widespread PFAS exposure may have public health consequences that need further study. Again, this is a really new topic, so there isn't a lot of information out about each type of PFAS or the exposure or the risk that comes with the exposure, and it's a lot that's still underway. In Article 4, the study found no link between prenatal PFAS exposure and preschool ADHD or cognitive dysfunction. In Article 5, the study found a consistent link between prenatal PFNA exposure and child externalizing behavior. The child's 11-year-old self-assessment and parents' SDQ assessments at age 7 and 11 determined this. This test was given by experienced clinicians with specialization in pediatric neuropsychological assessments conducted the test of cognitive abilities of the children, including language skills, estimated IQ, and working memory. In Article 6, the study found that prenatal exposure to PFAS was linked to an increased likelihood of attention problems in children. However, it was observed that higher maternal nut intake could potentially mitigate this effect. In Article 7, the study concluded that there is no significant correlation between exposure to PFAS during early life and the likelihood of experiencing ADHD symptoms. Article 7 is also the article that I spoke about that was conducted to investigate the absence of correlation between maternal and child PFAS concentration. So it's kind of like the article that went against my purpose of my presentation. And the last article, it was found that breastfeeding can lead to exposure of infants to PFAS, the potential risks of which are currently unknown. And overall, the analysis of the articles led to the conclusion that there is no evident association between exposure to PFAS, or PFOA, and their impact on behavior, cognition, and attention following early in life exposure. I also have a image on my poster which says PFAS and products to kind of give you an outline of different ways we are exposed to PFAS and like where they could come from. So it could come from the firefighting foams, which I mentioned, microwavable popcorn bags, water-resistant clothing, paint, stain-resistant products, cosmetics, pesticides, photography, stain-resistant furniture, fast food packaging, non-stick cookware, personal care products, and also the kind of big one is water. So a lot of the times, a lot of people are exposed to PFAS through contaminated water, and it's kind of like unknown. It can go unknown, and you don't really understand the health effects that come with it until you're exposed to a large amount of it, and it can later become an issue if it does have if you do have like a larger exposure than normal. I also have a chart here to include the articles, which also identify the time of exposure. A lot of them were before birth, and I had 2 after birth. I also listed the amount of people that were tested in each project. A lot of the concentrations came from maternal plasma. And I also listed the type of test that was used for each article. And that is all I have. Thank you.